Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being part of Virtual TRA Marketplace. Welcome to day 2. This is our second keynote event, and we are here with the leaders of PTRA's, a beloved Austin institution, growing or poised for growth right before the pandemic, and I'm sure they have more in store in the future. We have a sponsor for this panel, a couple sponsors for this panel, and something really exciting actually from Mission Restaurant Supply. So if you'll bear with me, I'm going to read a little something about them and play a short video for us to take a look at. Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay. Mission Restaurant Supply is the largest Texas-based food service equipment and supply dealer. For more than 30 years, Mission Restaurant Supply has maintained a reputation for building strong, lasting relationships and has offered an unparalleled menu of services. Mission has 6 locations across Texas in San Antonio, Austin, Dallas, Fort Worth, Corpus, and McAllen that are open to the public. I know I have dropped a lot of money at Mission Restaurant Supply for sure. Mission's metal fabrication shops works with state-of-the-art equipment to create high-quality stainless steel fabricated products, and Mission's charitable way has become a defining component of their company culture, and they are honored to be able to give away over 15% of their after-tax profit to charities across Texas. You can learn more about Mission at missionrs.com. And today, for all of you who have signed up to be part of the keynote session, they're actually giving off a Loring Extreme Blender with a 64-ounce Raptor container and an extra 64-ounce Raptor container valued at $500, which is very generous of them. Thank you guys. So all of you that have registered with us on Zoom actually are eligible for that blender. And right now I only see 70, but I see a lot more on Facebook. So those of you that are watching on Facebook, be sure to register on Zoom. Otherwise you won't be eligible for the drawing. Okay, I also want to introduce our second sponsor for the session today, Benny Keith. Benny Keith has been a partner of Texas Restaurant Association and our Education Foundation for a long time. They're wonderful partners, always giving really great feedback and just wonderful people to be with as well. David Werner is going to be our, our moderator for today. We're very excited to have David with us. He's going to lead us through a very interesting conversation with the leaders of the PTRA's brand. So David, take it away.
Thank you, Ann. I appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity to come on. As you mentioned, PTRA's is an institution in Austin and Central Texas, and we're very proud to be a part of this. So let's just get right to it. I'll start with Todd first. Todd, during the craziest time in food service history, how's PTRA's doing?
You know, we're faring better than most, I'm happy to say. Not for the others, obviously. This thing has obviously just rattled our industry as well as the bar industry. And it's been tough to watch. So we feel pretty fortunate in terms of where we sit right now. Obviously, it's been a roller coaster ride since mid-March. Since really the first announcement came down where South by Southwest got canceled, that was sort of the trigger point for the kind of, oh God moment. This is a big deal. You know, a major international festival like that is not canceled lightly. And for that to happen, that told us we were in a pretty significant moment. And we went into crisis management mode at that point. So ever since mid-March, like I said, it's been a roller coaster from a performance standpoint for the business, but also just emotionally for the culture, you know, to kind of manage our way through this. So it's been trying. We've learned a lot about ourselves. We've gotten very resourceful through this, like I'm sure most have. But yeah, it's been a tough ride.
So when you talk about resourceful, can you expand that a little bit and kind of give us maybe some details of some of the resources that you've had to rely upon?
Yeah, I mean, I think, from that very first week when, the virus struck, we realized the magnitude was such, and that things like South by Southwest were getting canceled. In those early days, Patrick, myself, Millie, our leadership team, we got together and we made an important decision in those early days. And that was, we were just going to lean into who we've always been. We were going to kind of lean on our values, our core values as a brand and a business, and just say, what should we do in this moment to best reflect those core values? And we weren't going to worry about what anyone else is doing. And so leaning on that idea, in those early days, we actually, because taking care of our employees is really our number one goal objective in our business. We're an employee first culture. And so when this thing came down, we actually made the decision to close our dining rooms before the mandate came down requiring that to happen at restaurants and bars. And so that was a voluntary decision we made right before the mandate, because we just felt like it was the right thing to do to first protect our crew members, and secondly, obviously, provide the safest environment possible for our guests. And that was to rely more on delivery and drive-through. So that was a big moment for us to make that call in those very early days where we really knew very little about what the overall impact was going to be and for how long. And then I think on the heels of that, a few weeks later, we sensed, that masks were growing as an idea that could be very preventative in the spread of the coronavirus. And so again, before the mandates that came down, we made the decision to place a large order for masks for all of our 700 plus team members at the home office and our restaurants, to make sure, again, we were doing the right thing based on what we were reading, what was being reported in the news from all the top scientists that we all have been listening to on a daily basis now. So I think some of it, it's not groundbreaking when I say innovative. Sometimes it's just timing. And it's taking the right steps at the right time to maintain the trust of your guest. And that's what we were all about, was how do we maintain the trust of those that show up to work with us every day in those restaurants? And how do we maintain the trust of the guest that chooses to spend their dollar with us? And so we were guided by those two notions in every decision we were making. And then I'd say the last thing I would add to those early days and some of the decisions we made very quickly was, the other big core value for us is we do a lot for the community. It's been a big part of what Patrick and Kathy started 15 years ago, and it guides us today. And so in those early days, we have a couple of food trucks. So we deployed our food trucks in the first couple of weeks to go out and feed the volunteers at the Central Texas Food Bank. We actually signed up for shifts with our own people volunteering at the food bank that same week. We showed up at hospitals in the area and fed the care workers that were providing care on the front lines during the pandemic. And so I share all that just to say, I think it's important that we made that decision back in those early days to say, we're just going to be the best version of ourselves during this crisis. That's all we can do. And we're not going to worry about what anyone else is doing or saying. We're just going to do what we think is right. And that's what we've lived by.
Very well said. Very well said. From an employee standpoint, have you seen any new challenges? I mean, you mentioned you've got 700 crew members. Have you seen any challenges from their perspective on childcare and the uncertainty and some of the things that that you may not have had to deal with in the past? And if you can, maybe some of the things that you guys have decided to do from that standpoint.
Yeah, the biggest challenge we've faced, honestly, with our frontline folks is just the instability of them being able to show up for work every day, right? You mentioned childcare. Just like everybody out there in the population, we've got people that have had scares, with Corona, being positive with Corona. Even if they thought they just were symptomatic, and we wanted them to obviously play it safe and not come into work if they were the least bit symptomatic. And so we would have them quarantined. And obviously back then in those early days, 2 weeks was sort of the magic number, quarantining for a good solid 2 weeks. And if it wasn't them personally, it was a member of their household that might have been exposed or was feeling symptomatic. And that would cause the employee to have to also quarantine with them, right? Because they don't know what their status would be. And we don't want to bring that into the workplace if we can avoid it. So really just the juggling of schedules at every location, and trying to cover for people that all of a sudden call in or just worried, they're not sure if they're symptomatic or not, and they're trying to go get tested. So just all of that sort of instability around scheduling folks and managing our labor became probably the most difficult and trying challenge for the operators out in the fields.
Okay, let's shift gears just if we can a little bit. Millie, talking about the uncertainty and the way things are changing on a daily basis, how has that kind of influenced your financial projections?
You know, what's interesting is when this all started, we had just locked down our fiscal plan. So, you know, pretty much we had to kind of toss that, not completely out the window, but, you know, calmly put it to the side and reevaluate what was going to make the most sense for us to figure out, okay, how do we refocus and get our arms around a sense of, you know, what was actually happening in real time. And so, as you can imagine, there was just a lot of gray for, you know, those first, you know, I'd say 4 to 6 weeks, you know, as the results just continued to slide, you know, on a week-to-week basis. And so, you know, really my area of focus was really just trying to establish that baseline. And once we got there, that was the trigger to go ahead and try to reforecast, not so much for the balance of the year, but give ourselves, you know, some milestones. And to also reevaluate, you know, everyone obviously uses comp sales as a gauge of performance, but, you know, I think it very quickly became clear that we needed to identify some other metrics to look at together with comp sales, such as week over week performance, just to get a sense of, you know, if we were starting to clear out of the performance that, you know, we were being exposed to. And so I think it was really important for us to align on what those metrics were, align on what some short-term goals would be, and then at least try to, you know, make the call on if we could, you know, really target, you know, some of those goals at the very least through the summer. That was pretty much as far out that we felt comfortable in projecting, you know, so, you know, that we could, you know, just get a sense of if we were, you know, actually kind of hitting those marks, or if so, you know, what else was the industry also moving in that way? And I think, you know, as each week, you know, just continued to stabilize, you know, for us, I think that was, you know, we wanted to be able to also share, you know, those learnings with the teams in real time, and celebrate, you know, the wins, because I think, you know, to Todd's point, what's really important for us, culture is very important, and being as transparent as possible, and then giving, you know, the team the recognitions for our, you know, being able to just kind of weather through this together. It was really, really important. And so, you know, I think, you know, having the goals and the metrics, establishing those together, and then sharing the results on whether we were hitting those or not was just really, really important. And so I think we've just managed to continue having that mindset. Obviously, we're now at the point to where we're making projections for, you know, where do we anticipate being by the end of this year? And then obviously, you know, what potentially can 2021 look like, which is still very unclear. I mean, we've got to get through what is this going to look like when school starts back up. So we're having those conversations currently. And as we get exposed to, you know, when we're back into the school season, obviously we'll be able to make any tweaks on our estimates and just stay focused, and really share those insights in real time with each other.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. An assessment of how things are moving and changing every day. You know, P. Terry's has always been a very progressive company, and for lack of a better term, technology sound. Explain, and I don't know if this is more for you or for Todd, on kind of how your digital standpoint has helped you. Obviously, the operation as it is today was adaptable and adoptable very fast as things changed. And, you know, Todd mentioned dining rooms closing down and being able to use a third party and have the to-go and the curbside. Explain, and I'll just open it up for all three of you. Explain kind of how, you know, your digital strategy and your embracement of technology has helped weather the storm.
Yeah, I'll kick it off. Just obviously we were, again, very fortunate that we already had, double drive-throughs at pretty much every location, whether they had dining rooms or not. And we have delivery set up through our partners at DoorDash and Favor. And we've got online ordering already, figured into our website, both desktop and mobile. So by having, those tools already in our toolkit, that we could pivot and shift our business more heavily to that direction when we had to close dining rooms. Really, it was just more about messaging, right? Our social media following and how we messaged at the actual restaurants when that day came that we closed our dining rooms, and making sure people clearly understood the different ways you could still utilize our brand and take advantage of our brand without really having to miss a beat. And so that was tremendously helpful to our survival in those early days, already having those platforms in place. And then on top of that, again, how do we just get better at that, right? And so some of the things we did, we really, Favor has been a particularly great partner of ours. We did a lot more events with our promotions with them, where they sponsored, free delivery days from P. Terry's to help, A, just draw awareness to the fact that you can get P. Terry's delivered, and B, get you to try it out and sort of train that new behavior if you weren't already taking advantage of delivery from us. And then, at the facilities themselves, we were right in the midst of testing tablet ordering out in our drive-through lanes to help move the drive-through lanes along a little quicker to increase throughput. And so that was a test at just a couple of locations that we immediately rolled out to all locations when this hit and we had to shut our dining rooms. So we immediately got tablets in the hands of all of our order takers at all locations, and did quick training with them and got them up to speed on how to manage the drive-through business and make a tablet ordering system work for you to increase throughput, which would increase consistency of speed, right? So people knew they could, even if the line to the drive-through was emptying out into the street, they knew if they got in line, they could depend on that being, less than 5 minutes, that experience. And so again, building that trust and confidence in the consumer to use us this different way was paramount in those early days.
Millie, do you have any insight or anything you want to add to that before I ask the next one? Because I've got another one.
No, absolutely. I think, to Todd's call out, the partnership with Favor, as well as, the sales that are generated through DoorDash and the platform for third-party delivery. I mean, obviously, very quickly, we started to get a sense that that was an area or a channel of sales that a lot of restaurants were really having to pivot and focus on, just with it being, a very significant means by which the customers, were opting into. And so, very quickly for us, it was important to get a sense or understand where we stood with that particular arm of sales and just monitor it, over the course of going through this. And it's been, really fascinating to see, the sales, almost double, across those two platforms for us. Obviously, again, kind of looking at it in tandem with what the industry has been experiencing. But when you have a strong partnership, especially like the one that we do with Favor, and being able to talk with them in real time in terms of what it is that we're seeing, what of the triggers work and which ones do we feel like, okay, let's approach it a different way. I think, being able to really use those triggers as well as, the tools has helped us to continue driving the sales where we've seen some sales erosion actually happen, and help to mitigate the loss and really protect that.
Great answer. Great answer. Yeah, we have seen from a distribution standpoint with customers of basically across all platforms, from healthcare to restaurants, obviously, country clubs, those that were ready, those that were kind of the P. Terry model of using a third party and embracing technology, have adopted to this new way of life a lot easier. It's been an easier transition. Nothing has been easy over the last 5 or 6 months, but certainly it has been something that we've seen take hold. So, Patrick, we don't want to ignore you. We wouldn't be here if it weren't for you and Kathy. I just want to ask you, now with Todd in his position, and obviously Millie, your CFO, how does that relationship work between founder and CEO and CFO?
Well, we're very fortunate that Todd and Millie are doing a great job for P. Terry's, and our relationship has certainly been. If you were ever going to test a relationship, it would be during a pandemic, and so we've been tested, and I think the thing that I'm most pleased about from a founder standpoint and somebody who's been at the desk for the last 15 years is that when something like this occurs, if you haven't established a trust with your customer, with your employees, with your community, with your vendors, if you haven't established that at the outset, it makes what we're going through now even tougher. And so I think we've always had the respect. We've always respected those entities, those people in our lives. And the great thing about Todd and Millie and what they brought to this table is the understanding of that. You can't teach somebody your culture. They either buy into it, they're either a part of it, or they're not. And so, from the get-go, both Todd and Millie knew exactly what P. Terry's was about. And so there was no learning curve to get to. They both walked in at their respective times and went right into it. I think the thing that I'm most proudest about in the last 5 months, and it hasn't been fun for anyone, and we're certainly most fortunate with our concept and our drive-throughs to have survived this better than most, is that we've established a balance in our business, with our business. And the balance has always been, as Todd mentioned earlier, you take care of your employees first. If you're not taking care of your employees, then you're already in trouble. And we've established the trust with our customers. So when the customer sees that we're open and that we're there and that we're taking the precautions that we think are mandatory or necessary at the time, they buy into it because we've already established that trust. And so we were able to not only, those initial first weeks and couple of months when really nobody knew what was going to happen, we took this in steps. And I watched Todd and Millie do this masterfully, where first we established that, okay, we've got our people taken care of. We've got our dining rooms closed. We've got face masks on. We're taking extra precautions in our cleaning. Things seem to be now settled down. We've gone through this for a couple of months. And although we don't see light at the end of the tunnel, we also know that we don't anticipate falling off a cliff anytime soon. And so we had restaurants being under construction at the time. And, I think the most remarkable thing from a business standpoint of all of this, and there are certainly other aspects to our business than the business standpoint, but to a business standpoint, the fact that we opened 3 locations in March, April, and May in the middle of all this. And we did it without shining a big light on ourselves and patting ourselves on the back, but we were under construction, and we needed to open those restaurants. They were they were ready to be open. And so we did it respectful of the environment and of our friends in this business. We felt like we were also helping out by hiring people that were looking for work at the time because they may have been laid off from other jobs. And we took care of what I have gracefully or ungracefully acknowledged as the mothership. And because if you don't take care of your business, then you can do little good for your employees, your customers, your community in general. And so, I've watched Todd and Millie steering this ship through the last 5 months. And it has been, from my standpoint, it's been very impressive. And I'm just glad they were there they've been here through all of this. I'm not sure I would have done near the job they have done.
Very well said. One thing that has been a theme so far from the three of you is culture. I don't know if you did that on purpose or if it was just built into who you are, but that is the core of it, the culture of the organization and how it is sustained. And if you say something, Patrick, it probably doesn't even need to be said to Todd and Millie or any of your crew members. They get it and they know that's the core to it. So that is something to be very proud of, for sure.
Yeah, thank you. And if I can just take a step back from all of this awful virus in the last few months, and I know a lot of people that are watching probably interested in that transition from the founder to a new CEO, to Todd. Up until 3 years ago, or a few years ago, we hired a vice president of operations. We had really never hired anyone outside of our core group. I mean, most of our people had come up through the ranks because I was so fearful of losing that culture. And we had a great hire with our VP of operations. She understood our culture. This transition was fairly smooth. And that allowed me to go looking for, what turned out to be Todd. And it's interesting because I've obviously was impressed with Todd's resume at Whataburger and Taco Cabana, and then at Lark Burger in Colorado. But the truth is, after a 45-minute phone conversation, I knew that culture, that he understood the culture and respected, what we've tried to achieve. And so you're right, man. If you lose your culture, you've lost everything.
Yeah, great insight. Very well said. Yeah, it's you can't teach it. You just have to. I think that's one of the reasons. One of the primary reasons of your success as a company is just that it's one fight for all. So I see we've got several questions that have come in. So I'm going to let Anna take a couple of those, and we'll open it up for the group and go from there. So Anna.
Thanks, David. Yeah, really interesting conversation so far, you guys. So thank you so much for that. We've got a really good question from Isaac Loya. He's asking about, he's commenting related to your comments on technology. And he says that making sure that technology is in line with our brands is important to our company. How do you think the dining experience is most easily translated to technology-driven services like POS or online ordering? So basically, how do you keep that heart of hospitality in whenever you are translating it to technology? Obviously, you get that experience going to the drive-thru or going to the window, but how does it reflect in your POS or your online ordering?
Yeah, I would say, it's interesting. We actually don't see ourselves as a very technologically advanced brand, and we actually choose that path, quite honestly, and that might sound funny to some. But, part of the allure of the P. Terry's experience is it's a simpler break in a otherwise hectic world, right? And so there's a reason we have, not only do we not have digital menu boards, we have hand-painted menu boards that we're trying to figure out how to mass produce moving forward as we accelerate our growth. We don't have guest Wi-Fi in our restaurants. Again, that's intentional because we want people to come in and actually put their technology down and have a conversation with one another while they break bread together. And so, on some level, we want technology to sort of disappear into the background and it not be noticeable. Obviously, we want technology to a degree to create convenience and extend our ability to offer convenience. And that's what drive-through and tablet order taking in the drive-through and online ordering and delivery offer you, is just more ways to touch the brand more efficiently if you're a guest of ours. But really beyond that, we try to keep the technology piece really in the background of the brand experience. Nice background there, buddy. Well played.
Thank you. No, that's really interesting. I mean, I think you're right. I know, especially in your dining rooms, whenever they were open, you did see a lot of people, a lot of families and kids, interacting, a lot of post-sports events activities were held at P. Terry's, so I understand what you mean. But still, there is still that moment, like when you're on Favor, or what's your other partner besides Favor?
DoorDash.
DoorDash, right? And you're ordering through them. In what way are you able to, use that audience data or that consumer data from there to help build your audience on your own marketing platforms?
Great question. In fact, I just had a conversation a couple of weeks back with Keith over at Favor, their COO, and we've got a great partnership that sort of transcends the transactional partnership. We both do a lot of business in Central Texas between our brands, and so the sharing of data has become very important. And in fact, they were able to provide me, they've got an incredible access to the database of information they've been building over the last several years. And so a great example is they just provided me heat maps of where all the deliveries come from around each of our locations.
That's great.
Because that's a totally different and unique and additive viewpoint of what really defines your trade area, right? It's how do all those guests out there, how do they view where their P. Terry's is? How do they select their P. Terry's, so to speak, to order from? And that by nature defines your trade area. So understanding those trade area dynamics is helping paint a picture for when we expand into, we just opened in San Marcos last year. We're going to be opening in New Braunfels this year, into San Antonio next year. So all that data is really informing those future decisions around real estate and site selection. And that's just one example of how we're kind of leveraging off of that relationship with Favor and the kind of data they can bring to the table. That's
helpful. So obviously, we'll dig into third party a little bit more if you don't mind, because I know Keith over at Favor, great guys.
Yep.
The third party delivery space can be a little contentious for restaurants, because some people that aren't able to do some sort of volume play with them have to pay some pretty enormous fees. We've seen 30-35% to be kind of normal. So how do you, obviously you guys are a little bit bigger than that. How do you view their partnership as a win-win? What do you expect of them that helps you win when it comes to consumers?
Well, number one, a big piece of it's keeping those rates down, right? And we're in a fortunate position where we have a good footprint in Austin, right? And we have a large customer base by what Kathy and Patrick have built over the last 15 years. So because of that, we had a little bit of pull, you might say, or leverage in those negotiations to say, if you want P. Terry's in your stable, then we need to talk about lower rates. And so we really leveraged that for a little bit. And then with Favor specifically, to get rates down a little bit more, we really renegotiated around marketing assets. If you order from P. Terry's today, you get a to-go bag that's got the back panel of that bag committed to Favor messaging.
Yeah.
Well, we're not doing that out of the kindness of our heart, so.
Got it.
So all those things matter. Everything is negotiable.
Right.
If you're a restaurant owner out there, your real estate is worth a lot, depending on who you're talking to. So table tents on your tables, wraps and bags and things of that nature. All those little real estate moments inside your four walls are worth a lot in those types of negotiations, and you shouldn't be afraid to pull those levers.
I would like to add, I think, one thing that we found to be also very helpful is understanding, again, kind of what we talked about earlier, which is, when we have these programs or offers that we very quickly do a recap and we assess whether it worked or not, and we share that insight with Favor. So it's not just about the pop that happens, but kind of looking at it on an extended view to see how sustained is that momentum. And then that also helps us to make a call on how frequently we want to do those programs. Mm-hmm. And then we look at our own calendar and we think about, okay, so when is it going to make the most sense for us to take Favor up on the offering or the partnership to really support the messaging, so that we can really optimize, the audience. So I think they've been extremely, open to when we have ideas. Kristen, our VP of Operations, as well as Todd, reaching out to them ahead of time. And in some cases, they actually reach out to us ahead of time and say, hey, have you guys thought about, was it National Ice Cream Day? They reached out to us and kind of teed that up as an idea because they wanted to support us, in terms of and featuring our milkshake. So it's really, kind of reaching out and coming up with a strategy that's going to be a win-win for both, for us and for them. And they've been a great partner from that standpoint.
You mean as a financial person, you work with your marketing team?
Hey, now I've worn a marketing hat before, so I've navigated different roles with different organizations, and so to the degree that it's a smart spend, I absolutely I'm open to it. Stay open-minded. If there's anything that I've learned, we can spend, but it's got to be a very thoughtful spend.
And let's not forget there are like 5 people in this office, so I'd be very careful about the term marketing team. I'm not sure.
Got it. Your person who does the tweets.
Marketing team is on this call right now.
That's true.
Give us.
No, I just wanted to draw that connection because I think it is so very important when your CFO or CMO or marketing person and finance person can work together, because it makes a lot more sense. You guys are able to make decisions together and measure things reasonably, right? Measurement for you, Millie, might be very different for measurement from the marketing team, marketing person. So it's just important to continue to have that dialogue, I think.
Absolutely. Well, and as we talked about establishing the goals and, which metrics are we going to use, it was really important for us to, figure that out first, so that then I could help to, translate, what the results were in a way that was going to be meaningful to each of those constituents or those audiences. And so I think, really understanding what's being asked and what it is that you're evaluating, and helping, that end user of insight, to be able to really understand it is key.
I also think, if I can jump in real quickly, part of the success with our third party, particularly with Favor, is that, Favor is local, and Favor knew us and we knew Favor. In the early days when Amazon was going to get involved with delivery and, these national companies, they really didn't know us, and they didn't. And so I think part of the beauty with Favor was that they knew us and understood us. And, I think it was to their benefit also to establish a relationship with us. When we've given over $1 million to charities in our community, I mean, there's a lot of goodwill we think we've established with P. Terry's. And I think it was advantageous to Favor as well to be a part of it, which certainly is advantageous to us. But I think in this regard, there was kind of a two-way street going on.
Totally true. I want to switch gears a little bit, David, if you don't mind. There's this really good question from Warren in the chat. Do you want to ask that one?
Go ahead. I've got it here, but go ahead.
Okay. Well, and it's relevant too, because I just had this chicken burger last night. So P. Terry's just joined the fried chicken sandwich competition in its own unique way, right? Burgers are natural, very veggie patty, home recipe, that kind of thing. So if you could share the uniqueness of the fried chicken sandwich versus a batter dipped ground chicken patty, which is unlike a lot of the current competitive offerings.
Yeah, I know Patrick probably has some thoughts on this too. When we created, we've had the same menu for 15 years, right? So this burger being on our menu is a pretty big deal for us because we don't add items lightly or often. And so, because simplicity is obviously at the root of kind of what makes us different, and we want to protect that at all costs. And so to just make the decision to entertain bringing another burger on, even if it's for a limited time only, was a big deal for us. But it started off in Patrick's kitchen. I mean, he had the idea. We were talking about this idea late last year is when it all sort of started and started getting some traction. And it started with the idea of Patrick started with our existing grilled chicken patty, right? You talked about the ground chicken. And that's why we sort of jointly felt comfortable with entertaining putting this item out there as a new burger offering, because it was such an easy leap from our core offering. We weren't having to bring in new SKUs in the back door. We weren't overcomplicating the menu by offering such a product. It was really taking an existing product, creating that battering for it, and creating a product that made sense coming from the P. Terry's menu. And so that was the biggest, how do we do this in a way that's going to be operationally easy to execute, not add complexity to the menu offering and our ability to execute it, and minimize what we're having to bring in the back door new to make that product happen. And those are two big guiding forces for us. Even when we're looking at just our Shake of the Month program, something that simple, that's always at the forefront of our mindset to make sure we protect the brand at every turn, And so with that, I'll let Patrick talk about the actual flavor profile.
Oh, well, you're nice. I think you did a great job with that, Todd. You're right. Going back and adding something to the menu is a really big deal for us. And I became, for years and years, I was the guy that just said no. People would say, can we get sliced avocado, or can you put a fried egg on it? Just all nice things, but not what we were about. And so I really protected the menu for years and years. In fact, I think I said no to bacon 5 years in a row, and then one day said okay, and then wondered what took me so long. But so yeah, I think it's a slippery slope, and so you really have to be careful once you make that call to add something to it, because we did not want a big menu. We really wanted to keep it simple. It was part of the main core of what we were about. I think the flavor, I think what I love the most about the crispy chicken sandwich is the simplicity of it. That we just, it's buttermilk and flour, salt and pepper, and some breadcrumbs. I don't think that, clearly, if you look at the menu, I don't like things complicated, but I think that, I think that's what makes this thing so unique, is that we didn't go crazy with a bunch of different things, that we felt like it stood on its own with keeping it simple. And our team has done a really good job rolling this thing out in the middle of this pandemic. I mean, I think we brought it out mid-May. And so, it turned out to be a really big deal for us. And I just couldn't be more delighted with how everyone has stepped in to make this happen.
Good. It has been really good. So I'm just kind of curious, just a fun question real quick. What is your go-to order for each of you? Millie, let's start with you.
Well, now it's the spicy chicken, but I strip off the lettuce, the tomato. I'm not a huge mayo fan, but I do keep the hot sauce on it. Perhaps one of my favorite items within the build of the burger are the pickles. The pickles are just like fantastic. So spicy chicken with cheese, jalapenos, hot sauce, and pickles. That's my go-to.
Todd?
I'd say my favorite go-to for indulgence would be the double cheeseburger. No lettuce, no tomato, so it stays really warm and gooey. And then add grilled onions, grilled jalapenos.
Patrick, are you allowed to choose one?
Yeah, no, this is really, this is funny to me and probably no one else, but when we were in the old days, when we first opened, I was, working the store for the first couple of 3 years. We would laugh because whenever somebody would order just a hamburger and a Coke, it was always an old white guy in a Buick. And it just became a joke. And so one day I just became the old white guy, and now I just order a hamburger.
How's the Buick, Patrick?
Somehow I don't have a Buick, but I just became that old guy. And I order a hamburger the way it comes, with extra ketchup, pickles, and onions. So I have become that person. I don't know how, but I ended up being there.
It's interesting. Awesome. I'm also going to launch a quick poll, which is just kind of fun for the milkshake flavors, because I definitely have my favorites. We've gotten a few questions from audience members too, asking about future development and future stores. I know you mentioned some expansion, Todd. In particular, we're getting questions from Cypress, near Houston, and East Dallas. Stay on the list.
All right. So from a growth path standpoint, and it's been shared before, obviously, but we're continuing to build out Austin, and we'll be opportunistic around Austin as Austin continues to boom and grow. So that'll never stop. And then obviously we're kind of working our way south right now down the I-35 corridor with the San Marcos opening last year, New Braunfels opening later this year. And so that effort, and then that'll have us going into San Antonio with our first openings there by next summer. So we expect to have a few open in San Antonio by the end of next year. So that's really what the end of this year and through 21 looks like from a growth perspective. I would say we're probably a couple of years out from starting to knock on Houston's door and move that way. And right now, DFW is not quite in our sights at this point. So I'm a big believer in sort of adjacent growth. Is you don't leapfrog markets and make that harder on you. There's lots of, people have said, why San Antonio? Well, San Antonio is an hour to the south, right, of Austin. There's a lot of people going back and forth between those cities. And so there's already a lot of brand awareness built up with San Antonians just from their visits to Austin. And so we want to leverage that first as we kind of dip our toe outside the Austin waters.
Sorry, East Dallas.
Yeah,
Sorry.
And we're sad in Fort Worth too. It's I'm not going to play one over the other, but we really would like to have you in Fort Worth. Sharon asked, do you deliver to Hawaii? So we're going to work on that.
Gosh.
That's fun.
So I wanted to outline something too that we had asked Millie earlier. In particular, Millie, we support education, our education foundation. Its goal is to basically encourage people to get in the industry and stay in the industry. And in the few minutes we have left, I'd like for people to understand a little bit about, your path. Obviously, we know Patrick's and Todd's been in the industry a long time too. But from an accounting perspective, basically what I want you to do for me right now is to tell the parents of all those kids out there that are interested in culinary or management, why the restaurant industry is such a great industry to be a part of and that you can do a bunch of things.
Yeah, absolutely. So, just to kind of give a little bit of background, my exposure to restaurant industry outside of, everyone, of course, or hopefully everyone has had an opportunity to, in some form or fashion, whether a hostess or a server has had an opportunity to work in industry. But outside of that, my exposure to this as an industry really came into play while I was studying my MBA at Rice. It's just 2001. So 9/11, as you can imagine, and with Houston and, the oil and gas industry really being kind of at the core and being flipped upside down, I knew that, I wanted to make certain that I took my skill set and still found a way to do an analysis where it had a direct connection with the end user and a direct connection with the customer. And so, I had an opportunity to actually meet members from the Darden team at the time. And as I started to really get an understanding of the different brands that were being represented and the many layers of finance going beyond accounting, but finance and analytics and operational analytics and marketing analytics, I knew it was going to be, kind of the perfect opportunity for me to just always continue learning. So many opportunities, whether it was going to be navigating across different brands or navigating across different functions of finance. For me, that's really what I found to be the most motivating factor, was being in an environment where you're just continuously learning and growing, and being surrounded by peers who are passionate, in that same discipline, but then also interacting with other members throughout the organization. And so obviously with finance comes your exposure to different departments and helping to have those departments understand, the impacts that their changes and their decisions have on the business. And so it was just a great opportunity to be directly involved in helping everyone to understand why the customer experience, and specifically, with food, and knowing that at the end of the day, you've done a great job if that customer comes back. And so helping, being in a role where I could help connect the dots and sharing that information with different departments. That's why, finance for me within restaurants specifically was just, it was a home run. And I've had the opportunity to pivot and go into industries, like jewelry with my time spent at Kendra Scott, but that too, it all boils down to the customer experience. But I love food so much that I managed to make my way back to restaurants. still doing what I love, which is finance. So there's so many endless opportunities with finance and accounting, and even just other disciplines within restaurants. But a lot can be learned as a student. If you're passionate about it, there's a lot, an endless amount of opportunities within the industry.
Very well said. Thank you, Millie. Don't be surprised if I asked you to come and speak for something in the future, because I think your story is really inspiring, and I definitely want other young people in the profession to hear more about it as well. We have a couple lingering questions that I want to make sure we get to. Allie Jarrett is asking what POS you use across the state.
We use the Brinks POS as our POS partner.
All right, there you go, Allie. Okay. All right, I do have I have two winners to announce. First of all, I have the poll for the shake. So there you go. Double chocolate is the winner. Awesome. Which I fully support, actually. David, do you see any other questions? Do you have anything else you'd like to ask this group?
No, I think you've covered most of it. The ones that I were interested in is growth, and then if there's any parting insights on predictive behavior. Obviously, none of us know what's going to happen tomorrow, let alone next year. But certainly, I think Terry's has positioned themselves to weather that storm without a doubt. But if there's anything else that Todd or Millie or Patrick wanted to throw in there about kind of planning for the foreseeable future, I think everybody would want to get an insight on that.
Well, one thing that I have found extremely helpful, and I was talking to Todd and Patrick about this earlier, and you actually kicked off, our discussion with this, which is utilizing resources. And again, I think, we've all had, great opportunities of, colleagues from, different areas of this business. And because we're in a pandemic, none of us know, kind of where the end state of this is going to be. So I find it to be, just an excellent opportunity, if anything, to utilize those connections to, maybe validate or invalidate gut or where, or if anything, just being, of support. I think it's been really helpful to have, those resources, or at least feel, an opportunity to tap into those resources in that way. So that's one thing that I can truly appreciate about this industry. As big as it is, it's a very small world. And I think, we've managed to really, just, take advantage of those relationships and partnerships in that way.
I agree.
I would say to continue to protect your brand. I think that's the most important thing you can do, and to realize that, what we're going through is not forever. And if you can hang on through all of this, that's what we're trying to do right now. And to realize that when we come out of this pandemic, and things start to stabilize, that hopefully you have done everything you can during this period to protect your brand and your reputation within your community with what you do every day. I think that's the most important thing for all of us in this business right now.
Well said. Todd, do you have anything else?
I think I would just end kind of where I started in terms of, I think it's important, especially when you get into crisis mode, we all turn to our industries and kind of what everyone else is doing out there. And we feel like we have to go do those exact same things and take those same steps to stay in touch with, today's consumer and in light of a pandemic going on. And I would actually preach the exact opposite. I'm not a huge fan of large conferences because I think they preach a sea of sameness to some degree, depending on the nature of the conference, because everyone takes furious notes and then goes back and implements the same things, right, off the same insights. So to me, gather those same insights everyone else is gathering, but figure out how do you use those insights to zig when everyone else is acting. Use the crisis to differentiate yourself even further from the pack, and don't fall into that sea of sameness.
Yeah, great point. I think building on that, back to what we talked about, building on that culture, your beliefs, what got you there, not being willing to flip and to flop and to change at the whim. I mean, to have the same menu for all these years and stick to that core is I think key, and certainly sustainability. So I just want to thank you from a distribution standpoint, all that you've contributed to the industry and what you continue to do, and your steadfastness, because that sends a big message to a lot of operators, to a lot of folks. Anna mentioned the educational foundation, and getting people, talented people, into this industry is becoming harder and harder every single year. And so to attract that talent and to keep them is paramount to what I think we all need to be working for. So from that standpoint, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to be here today. Thank you for what you continue to do. Thank you for an outstanding hamburger. And beyond that, Anna, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, David. I appreciate that. I really am very appreciative of the time that you guys took with us. I know Todd and Patrick and I were planning this keynote session way back in March or February or something like that. And then we had to delay it and then go online. So I'm really glad that we were able to have this conversation. I can tell by the comments we're seeing here and on Facebook that this session has been really valuable to a lot of your industry colleagues. So thank you for that. I do have the winner. I have the winner of the Warring Extreme Blender with the 64-ounce Raptor container. The winner for this keynote presentation, and we're going to do another one tomorrow, so thank you to Mission Restaurant Supply, is Patrick Buttigieg from Island Time Grill right here in Austin. So Patrick, congratulations. Pam from Mission Restaurant Supply will be in touch very soon. For everyone else, we have a ton of sessions coming up also this afternoon and for the next 4 days. So please join us at tramarketplace.com. Be sure to check out some brand experience demos so you can see what all of the vendors are up to. And there's a lot of really great keynotes and pack sessions available to you. Thank you all and have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you.
Thanks.